Food and fuel shortages are now a reality for many people in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and some areas of Gauteng. The disrupted supply chain after days of looting and destruction at malls and warehouses has now caused food and fuel shortages. Let's get a consumer journalist's view on the situation. I'm joined now by Wendy Nola from Times Live. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. So talk to me about what consumers are going through in KwaZulu-Natal, and if you can tell me which parts. Is it just Durban and Pietermaritzburg, or are there other areas?
No, Sally, the looting was very widespread. So entire shopping malls in rural parts of KwaZulu-Natal up towards the Mozambique border, taken out, looted. I spoke to a man who owns, his company owns and developed 3 shopping malls. Well, 4. Only one is left standing in Newcastle. The others in Jazini, Bopameni, I forget the third one. All taken out. I mean, just not operating, looted completely. So, people in those areas, I'm hearing from a lot of people, that they protecting their neighborhoods during the day and at night, but the day after sort of patrolling and standing guard, then they go and stand, in food queues, or they stand in food queues all day and then start patrolling at night. So there's a level of utter desperation and exhaustion. And in some supermarkets, if you can get in after a very long wait in a queue, you're being rationed. So 10 items per person, which makes it difficult for people to shop for others, elderly relatives and the like, because you've only got 10 per person, 10 items per group.
Yeah, and you can understand the rationing. I mean, Rupiwa, our business anchor, was telling us that Tiger Brands, they say they've lost 150 million rands worth of goods, and they stopped operating in KwaZulu-Natal. Wendy, I know that you also speak to the major retailers, you speak to the major food producers. What are they telling you about the way forward?
Well, a lot of them are saying, don't quote me, but we've never seen anything like this in 30 years of retail, not during apartheid, not during the transition, and not since until now. They're actually, you'll probably know this in the media, they're sort of saying, please don't spread too much panic. We don't want panic buying. Some still have distribution centres that have not been looted or burnt, and there is some supply, but it's terribly, terribly critical, and the coming days is going to get worse. So I wrote a story today about Fly Safaris putting on extra flights into and out of Durban. It's a question of food in, people out. So a lot of people leaving, one-way tickets out, mostly to Cape Town, and then the cargo areas of the planes carrying food. Some from companies for their KZN staff, and others going to certain groupings who have organized distribution channels. But at the moment, if you go into a supermarket, most supermarkets in Durban won't have certainly no bread, no fresh milk, no meat, canned foods, long life milk, that sort of thing. And of course, then there's the question of medicines, which is also critical.
Yeah. Before we get to the medicines, I want to ask you, have you been able to get a sense of how long this is going to last? And I was just speaking to the N3 toll concession people, and they've explained that sort of 220-kilometre route between Pietermaritzburg and Harrismith, that part of the N3 remains closed. So that's the middle chunk, which means you can't get a truck through. Also, warehouses have been burnt to the ground. Malls have been destroyed. So even if you get the food in, where are you going to store it? Have you been able to get any sense of how long the crisis around food shortages will last in KwaZulu-Natal?
I don't think, no, I haven't, Sally. I don't think anyone wants to commit to that. And hence, the flying in option for the food, it really is becoming a humanitarian crisis. I'm hearing also a lot of the smaller supermarkets in the residential areas, many people complaining of gouging. So that, I heard 800 Rand, a supermarket in Chatsworth selling baby formula for 800 Rand a tin. And then the converse, I'm hearing heartwarming tales of retailers just making a plan, bakeries going into overdrive, and a relative of mine bought a pack of 10 cans of baked beans for a really low price So there are those that are helping out the community and others that are taking advantage, unfortunately.
Well, I suppose that is always, you're always going to see that in a time of crisis, sadly. Talk to me now about medicine supply. I mean, you know, I know that the COVID third wave has not hit KwaZulu-Natal as hard as in Gauteng, but I would imagine also testing is probably very low due to all the unsettled times. So it might be difficult to get a handle on what's going on. And while I've heard vaccination sites they're trying to stay open, that's also been severely disrupted.
Absolutely right. I think Clicks has reopened their centres. But the story is far beyond that, because we've had Cipla, a major generics manufacturer, manufacturing plant in Durban, is gone, burnt, and 2 major distribution centres for medicines also. So not only have you had around 200 pharmacies looted, most of them in KZN, but the supply chain has been disrupted, which of course was obviously planned. So, and more than that, you know, all the computers stolen, so patient records, people are going to have to go back to their doctors to get scripts. Yeah. But, so along with food queues, you're seeing queues outside of pharmacies, those that are brave enough to open for a few hours a day. At least with medicine, though, I know in the case of my own family members, at least once you've filled your scripts, that's it for another month. Unlike food, where you have to keep finding new sources of supply. But the medicine one is a story that's going to be terrible when, you know, in the weeks to come, unfortunately.
Wendy, I have to ask you about petrol, because we know that on Tuesday the oil refinery Sapref shut down.
Sapref.
And that's like they supply a third of the petrol of the country. Is that right?
That's right. Force majeure. They said the notice went out. So the word's gone out. Please don't just go and try and fill up your tank to then go nowhere. You know, let's leave it for emergency services, trucking, that kind of thing. And I certainly Monday, Tuesday, there were queues snaking whenever there was a fuel station open, you know, people queuing around the block. And it doesn't look like that situation is going to be alleviated anytime soon, as you say, because we don't know when that refinery is going to reopen. So again, another dire situation. But for those people who are just staying put, they're not going to work, the kids aren't at school, the food and the medicine story, particularly food, is the most pressing issue for them at the moment.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Thank you so much, Wendy Knowler, consumer journalist with Times Live. At least some hopeful news that stocks are being flown in, and perhaps the military may be involved in that food relief as well.